Goes on if we're live, and we are live. Okay, welcome to our Jabu Mind Tea with Teachers. It is such an honor for me to spend this time with Tovi Scruggs-Hussein. I had an amazing experience in February in Tovi's workshop. It was life changing. And I and she talks about leading with connection and compassion and being courageous. And all of those three things is what she wrapped around me in that workshop. So for that reason, I am honored to share Tovi's wisdom with teachers and educators in this time. Please feel free to share her resources. She is such a wealth of information, and she has ongoing things that I want her to share and talk about. So before we start, to be able to really receive this information, if we just take a couple deep breaths into wherever we might be feeling our body needs to settle. And in that place, I want to hold this wisdom. Tovi is a visionary and an educator and an author. She's an award-winning urban high school principal with over 25 years of emotional intelligence training. She does cultivate courageous, connected, and conscious leaders and service organizations internationally to recognize their calling to be more. She's a dare to lead. She brings a message of vulnerability, which is such a huge part of any internal work. She asks us to do our internal work so we can do our external work. She models that in everything that she does, how she leads. We are in our chat box going to share some upcoming events and her website so you can dive deeper into this extraordinary woman. And in these challenging times for teachers and educators, we thought remote learning was a lot, and deep sigh. And we were doing these on remote learning, and the trauma informed that the children were going to be coming back into the classroom, and where the educator and school systems were going to meet these kids. And that now took a back seat to where these kids are going to be coming in. And if you feel, I'd love to have you speak to that. And
yeah,
anything else that feels appropriate.
Thank you.
Moment.
Well, Jill, it's really an honor to be an invited guest on the Tea Time show. So I really appreciate that. And educators, I mean, I started teaching as what I like to say, a baby teacher, 22 years old. And, our brains are not even fully developed, and we're in the classroom with other undeveloped brains. And so educators, teachers, this is the field and the people that are near and dear to my heart. And leadership development in our field is not, to me, as what it should be. Like the Fortune 500 companies are getting all this outstanding leadership development, and yet we are creating their jobs through our jobs as teachers and educators. And so that was part of my attraction to doing a different form of leadership development that I brought back. And I'm saying this, I'm going to answer your question, but I'm saying that to come full circle, in that this inner work that we do leads to making us better teachers and better principals and district leaders. In times like this, I mean, we're hearing the word used all the time, unprecedented. The bottom line is none of us signed up for this, especially in education. We didn't sign up to do distance learning. We didn't sign up to learn different technological tools to do distance learning. We are all in survival mode right now. And what I think people are not fully acknowledging and realizing is that we're all experiencing this collective trauma of a pandemic. And the adults are just as traumatized. And we're trying to hold space for the kids, but who is holding space for us? And what has really shifted in the system to be able to do this well and successfully? And I would have to say, really nothing. The leaders are completely overwhelmed. No one is prepared for this. So we can't even like try to blame someone if we wanted to say, why aren't you prepared for this? The biggest piece of what I feel is avoidable preparation, or if I could say it that way, we didn't have the emotional intelligence capacities to deal with a pandemic and the uncertainty of what it would bring in those that we serve, and all the fear that we need to mitigate in the people that we serve. And now we're compounding that with a lot of racial strife. And it's racial strife, but at the same time, it's really racial healing in so many ways. And no one's really holding this container in education for this to happen well. And the bottom line is, it's June. Our kids will be coming back in August. And I'd like to think that we'd be more ready, but I can't think of a more monumental task than to be a teacher or principal right now, to be totally exhausted and stressed, and to know that you don't have a summer, because you're still going to be giving so much mental capacity and energy to having to deal with what's going to be happening in August. Like, I can't even imagine. As teachers, we give up our summers anyway in so many ways to prepare and do those fun things that we want to make sure our classrooms look great and to make sure our curriculum is stronger and our lessons are better. And at the same time, now we're doing that with like no break at all. And then diving back into this uncertainty of distance learning or kids coming on partial days. It's monumental right now. It's monumental. And I haven't even gotten started, and I'm not going to go there, on the teachers that have kids at home.
Right.
We're dealing
Right.
with it. Like,
yeah.
Yeah. So it's a lot. That was a long answer for your question, but it's.
Well, and it's when you say survival mode, that is when the mindfulness practice, or that going the internal work, because that's that brain, that fight, flight, freeze, that I don't know about you, but I get raw. Like and that's that vulnerable spot, but it's also that I need to fill up my own. And it's that awareness piece that I think sometimes where if we can check in. And I was wondering if there's some wellness practices that I know that you give a lot of workshops and have helped people heal. I know you brought awareness to me to help with the healing, but I think that survival mode is incredibly real in our brain. And I think that's these times where there's this uncertainty of the pandemic and what it's going to look like, but also the collective pain and the healing that is now so incredibly necessary.
So the healing piece is absolutely critical. And some people have given me a hard time, like, you can't be a healer. You can't call yourself a healer. And I see it, right? I was like,
I'm like, well, I'm sorry. That's the first word I'd use for you.
Thank you. And I don't see it as I go and do this healing. Right. I facilitate and foster the conditions for people to heal themselves. Like, healing is an empowerment process. Healing is connecting to that inner wisdom and having others that help us connect to that inner wisdom. And to even heal, we have to even acknowledge all is not well in me. Like, there is something that needs to be healed and repaired. And I'm not necessarily feeling my whole and best self. And that's okay. It's really a byproduct of this type of society. And that process doesn't have to look like even another person. It can look like a book. It can be a movie. It can be a song. There are so many healing things in our environment that feed our souls. And so fostering a healing environment and in a sense, giving permission to name that we need healing, I feel like is half the step. And right now, when I think about intentional wellness practices for how we should be healing in this time, both from the collective trauma standpoint as well as the racial healing standpoint, definitely mindfulness is first on the list. Like, I have deepened my practice. I'm going 35, 45, sometimes over an hour in the morning. If I have that time in the morning, I'm going to use it to just sit longer, to be in my feelings longer, to be in that discomfort longer. It's taking me longer to even anchor into what I'm feeling, because to make it through the day and to function, I've had to kind of like push the feelings aside just enough, let them hang out there, but I haven't been able to overindulge in them. I've had to really set aside time for that to happen. And I think our teachers are going through that a lot. When we're engaging with our kids online or engaging with our families, we've had to put our own feelings aside. And so tapping into longer meditation time has been critical. The other piece around the meditation practice is that it does work on our biasing. When we're aware of what is arising, we're aware of those thoughts that could be biased that are arising. And being in that present moment, okay, well, how do I take that sacred pause and interrupt that bias? How do I speak what I know to be true about the bias that I'm having? Honoring boundaries is huge right now. Say no to more things if you can to protect your time. If it's not like 100% clean yes, then it's not a good yes. So my boundaries really have been even, engaging in beautiful podcasts and webinars and Facebook lives. And I'm like, okay, you need to give me some questions in advance. Like, I used to be able just to do it more off the cuff, but I know right now my amygdala has been more hijacked more frequently. My prefrontal cortex is a little offline sometimes. And so it just helps me to even be more at ease to show up in this way, to say, can I please get the questions in advance this time? It has just changed that aspect of things. So we're starting to see, what are your boundaries? How are you speaking for what you need? Doing what keeps you well. What do you know in your heart keeps you well, nourished, and resourced? Those are the things that you should be advocating for yourself right now. We are under conditions for extreme self-care, not just self-care, but extreme self-care. And my last one is really love anyway. And I'm really giving that message too for a lot of folks of color, where anger is coming up and challenges around the pieces of how our white allies are starting to show up. And is some of it performative, meaning looking not very genuine, or is it authentic? And I just say to us, love anyway. Let's extend grace to ourselves and to others in getting through this time, because it's the extension of grace that is going to allow us to stay connected to each other and to assume the best in each other, which connects us to being more patient and having the ways of being. Like, every day, how do I want to show up? How do I want people to experience me? That's what I mean when I say the ways of being. What are we anchoring to?
Yeah. It's got to feel hard to trust, I think that I know that even with my very fine private college education, did not know my white privilege until your workshop. And so the awareness that you bring, you do with such grace. And I just admire the courage, and I want to encourage everyone, because it made me want to learn. And if we can, and I thought I was well educated, but I missed probably the largest, most social and emotional lesson that anyone could ever have. And if, and so therefore I start as a baby, as an infant, to learn this. And so I'm so grateful for the work you're doing. And it's so, we all need to be a part of this. And so for all of the patients that you're offering, and to respond to that with love, is it I don't know, it just makes me feel really a greater desire to learn. So thank you for that, and for the wonderful tools that you suggested, and recognize that we all are at this time collectively spinning.
Yes.
And you can feel it.
Oh yeah, you can absolutely feel it. Absolutely feel it. And I'm just honored by what you shared. And I just, I want to also name my colleagues in the work of Racial Healing Allies, Sally and Grace. Their information's on the website as well. We are really in this together and approaching the work from a space of modeling allyship, modeling the vulnerability, modeling the difficult conversations and the pain that comes with this work along the way. No one ever gets it perfectly right. And so we can't even expect that of ourselves. And that's, again, where that grace and that patience and that love comes in, because we're in a healing process. We are in a healing process. And it is so hopeful for what this means for our children, because we have so many teachers and leaders that are showing up not being fully aware of their privilege. And therefore, by not being fully aware of their privilege, they don't really see their kids in an honest way. Yes, they love the kids. Yes, they're answering their calling to do this divine, human, beautiful work. And at the same time, there's a blind spot there. And so this work just helps to eradicate that, so that we can get to the heart of the matter of really delivering equitable education in our classroom, in our schools. Because when we see each other and see the race of who we are, it's okay. When you look at me and see a Black woman, I want you to see a Black woman, because in that means there's some parts of my story there that you're acknowledging that allow me to be who I am. Yeah.
I see you. I'm really enjoying this time. I wanted to share that I did sign up. It's every Wednesday in July, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken. Is that correct? And I can't tell what Tate is putting up, but we'll make sure that it is put up. But it's TCS, the website, as well, to sign up. And also, is that right? Or is there a link also through the Coalition of Schools Educating Mindfully, COSM?
Yeah.
So both of those.
Yeah.
So we'll put both of those up on the chat so people can find where that is. And I cannot recommend it enough. I think the workshop I attended at Coalition of Schools Educating Mindfully, which I want to say you are the national board president and was the keynote speaker, but also have a California chapter, if I'm not mistaken. So we would want to share that as well, because Tovi, you're in Oakland,
Yes.
right? Yes. So, but they have state chapters. And so California is, and so whatever state people are in, they can find that through Coalition of Schools Educating Mindfully. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yes.
And I think you have 20% going back to the organization, as you so generously share. Well, we're almost to the end of our time, and I know that you had something that we were going to close with.
Yes. Just let's take a moment. Thank you again for having me, Jill. I'm going to just let us be in a centering moment, and I'm going to read a poem, and then I'm going to ring the bell. And when I ring the bell, we'll pretty much be done. We'll smile at each other, and we can be unlive. But very alive. All right, so let's just take 3 deep breaths, maybe closing our eyes or gazing down. and just honoring ourselves for even showing up in this moment. And honoring ourselves for showing up in this moment in time. There are no accidents. Feel into your heart space right now. What needs softening? And just breathe into that space. And I read this poem to you. Thank you for choosing me to lead this brigade, to be unafraid, to go where you send me. Let nothing upend me. Thank you for gently shaking me awake, for allowing no mistakes or misgivings. Thank you for healing and health, for wisdom and wealth. Thank you for taking my heart in your hand and letting me stand in the light. Thank you for protection, direction, and blessed assurance that thank you is the only prayer that we ever really need to pray, if indeed we pray. And that is by the great Greta Sashita. And we just honor the courage in all of us to be leading in this brigade in a time such as this. All right, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Until next.